Good evening, and welcome back to Election Night in America, 2024. Tonight, President Joe Biden will run for re-election in a highly anticipated matchup with former President Donald Trump for a second time. We're about to get our first results out of some East Coast states, but before we look at those, we want to show you some pre-election polling and then some exit polls. In the 6 most competitive states, Joe Biden leads in 3 and Donald Trump leads in the other 3, with the largest lead you can see here being in Georgia. That being said, all these states are considered toss-ups by our news network. We expect all these states to be very close. Let's now take a look at our broader battleground map. 12 states have been highlighted. These are the states we'll be watching most over the course of the night. Obviously, every state will get coverage from us, but nevertheless, we are going to watch these 12 states in specific the most. The first state that will close their polls that's on this list is Georgia at 7 o'clock, but be on the lookout for New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, and Ohio as the night continues to go on. These states will close within the first hour, and they could give us a good idea of where the country is headed. That being said, let's look at our first exit poll. Just 39% of Americans believe the country's headed in the right direction, compared to 58% who say we're on the wrong track. This is a worrying first sign for Joe Biden, as his administration seems to not be reassuring Americans about the trajectory of the nation. Another bad thing for Joe Biden. Just 43% of Americans are telling us that they approve of him, compared to 56% who say they disapprove of him. Yet another bad sign for the president, but there is good news. Donald Trump is even more unpopular, with just 40% of Americans saying they approve of him, compared to 58% who say they disapprove. Another bad thing for Republicans, access to abortion remains an important issue for voters, with 27% of Americans telling us it's their number one issue. Another thing that could hurt Donald Trump, 21% of Americans say that his charges were a big issue for them. Nevertheless, Joe Biden has to be worried about that top number, economy. A third of Americans say that that was the most important issue that they voted on. That could be concerning for him, as the economy has been inconsistent under his watch. Rising crime is another issue that could affect Democrats, as 7% of voters said that it was their number one issue. 12% of voters listed other issues, mainly healthcare. It's now 7 o'clock on the East Coast. We're officially ready to deliver our first results. In Vermont, we can project Joe Biden will win this state. No surprise here, 3 electoral votes from one of the bluest states in the country. In Indiana, 11 electoral votes here was called a poll closing for Donald Trump last time, not a surprise there. In Kentucky, Donald Trump, we can project, will win this state, but it's currently too early to call in Georgia, where Joe Biden is trailing Donald Trump by around 30%. We want you to take a look at that needle on that kind of barometer right above the percentage. The needle does not correspond to the percentage. It's a percentage chance of winning the state. So as you can see, Joe Biden actually is favored to lose Georgia right now, but not by a 2-to-1 ratio. That needle is kind of in the 38-40% trajectory, and that needle will update as the night goes on. We want to kind of a new thing we've been testing out. We want to show you guys that so that you will have a good idea of which state is likely to vote for Joe Biden, which state is likely to vote for Donald Trump as the night unfolds. But again, take it with a grain of salt. Just 2% of the votes been reported, mostly from rural counties. Way too early to call in Georgia. In Virginia, kind of the opposite here. Mostly rural counties in, but this time Joe Biden is favored to win by a pretty heavy amount. We'll keep you posted on Virginia with 7% of the vote in. And South Carolina, with 5% of the vote in, Joe Biden does lead, but does not seem likely to win the state. It is too early to call the Palmetto State. So, this is our electoral map. 3 electoral votes for Joe Biden, 19 for Donald Trump. As you can see right now, Joe Biden is favored to win, but by a little less than at the beginning of the evening. 54.6% for him, 45.4% for Donald Trump. Let's now take a look at our 7:30 p.m. poll closings. 3 states just closed their polls, but first we're going to give you a projection in South Carolina. Donald Trump has held on to the state for the GOP. We want to show you the current electoral map from the state of South Carolina. 44.6% for Joe Biden, 52.6% for Donald Trump. Right now close, but will likely not be close as more votes come in. And we can also project West Virginia will go for Donald Trump. Not a surprise here. 4 electoral votes staying in the president's column. But more importantly, too early to call North Carolina. 67% for Joe Biden at this hour, but it is too early to call because most counties have yet to report any information, although right now Donald Trump does have a narrow lead in terms of the probability. Ohio, mostly early votes coming in here from these northern counties, specifically Cuyahoga, which is where Cleveland is. Joe Biden ahead by a lot, but still not favored to win the state of Ohio. So electoral map time, Joe Biden has actually expanded his lead in the percentage despite actually trailing by more in the electoral vote count right now. 3 for him, 32 for President Trump, and states like Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia way too close to call, or too early to call rather, at this moment. It's now 8 o'clock. We have a lot of poll closings, our biggest batch of the night. We're going to get started with the state of Virginia. This was a contentious state early on, but with 70% of the vote, and we're officially ready to call it for Joe Biden. He has won this state. Almost every county has come in from Virginia. We're just waiting on a few in the north that will likely favor the president as well. Either way, that being said, he's up by about 2% right now, and he will likely expand that lead as more counties come in. So let's give you an update on more states. In the state of Massachusetts, no surprise here, will stay with the president. Another not really surprising result. Maine's at-large vote, 2 electoral votes there going for Joe Biden. We can also report that in that first district in the southern coastal region, 1 electoral vote there going for Joe Biden. We do not have a projection yet from that second district. But that being said, in Rhode Island, another safe one for Democrats. Joe Biden will hold on to the state's 4 electoral votes. And in Connecticut, very Democratic state on the coast, 7 electoral votes there for Joe Biden. We can also project in New Jersey, 14 electoral votes there. Joe Biden will win this state. And in the state of Delaware, his home, 3 electoral votes at stake for the president. He will hold on to those. Maryland, 10 electoral votes here for the president. Obviously staying blue, not a surprise, one of the bluest states in the country. Then going out to Washington, D.C., where he lives right now, 3 electoral votes there. The question really from D.C. is whether or not he'll be living there next year. Anyways, in the Midwest, Illinois, 19 electoral votes at stake there. We can project Joe Biden has held on to that number. But on the contrary, we can project in Tennessee, 11 electoral votes at stake there. Donald Trump will win this state with 4% of the vote reporting. We can also project he's won Alabama, 9 electoral votes there. They redrew their congressional map, but obviously presidentially will stay with the Republicans. And in Mississippi, 6 electoral votes at stake there. We can project it will stay with the president. In Oklahoma, 7 electoral votes there. Obviously not a surprise to anyone. Donald Trump will hold on to this state. And in Missouri, 10 electoral votes. Donald Trump has held on to this state, winning it 3 out of 3 times. It's currently too early to call in Ohio. We want to give you an update there. More votes have come in. Joe Biden still does have a lead because the votes are mostly still from Cuyahoga as well as Franklin County, which is where Columbus is. That being said, the needle does tilt towards President Trump at this point in Ohio. In North Carolina, it's so close right now, as you can see, essentially a dead heat in terms of probability, but Donald Trump does have a lead as these western rural counties are beginning to flow in here and boost his numbers. In Maine 2nd District, we've kind of taken out that lower 1st District, but in the counties that have reported from the 2nd District, we can see Donald Trump is a pretty clear lead at this moment, likely to win that. In New Hampshire, though, Joe Biden does have a lead right now by about 16%. Donald Trump pulled out in September. He said he was withdrawing ads, still maintained he could win New Hampshire, but tonight it seems like that kind of cutting off New Hampshire from the campaign was a good decision for Donald Trump as he does trail Joe Biden by a pretty substantial amount. In Pennsylvania, got a big drop from Allegheny County. That's where Pittsburgh is, right, that blue spot in the western part of the state. Joe Biden has a big lead right now, and it's actually pretty good for him, as our percentage needle does give him nearly a 70% chance of winning Pennsylvania. That's a big piece of news for him. It's the most important state of the night, and if Donald Trump doesn't win Pennsylvania, he'll be very unlikely to win the presidency. Let's now take a look at Florida. 30 electoral votes there. 15% of the vote has been reported. Donald Trump trailing Joe Biden early on, but in the percentage total leading by a good amount. Obviously, Miami-Dade early vote in Joe Biden only up by around 11% there, looking like a pretty subpar performance in the South for Joe Biden, and obviously those rural areas up north in the Panhandle likely to come in and be very Republican within the next couple minutes. So that looks like a pretty bad showing for Joe Biden in Florida right now, though he does lead at this hour. So let's talk about electoral map. It's so close right now. Joe Biden doing very well in Pennsylvania, but not doing too well in Georgia, Florida, or Ohio. That gives him a 52% chance of being elected president. Joe Biden. Donald Trump at 48%. Very close right now. 75 electoral votes for Trump, 90 for Biden. Just a very close election all around, with most of these swing states going to come down to the last few votes. Let's now take a look at our 8:30 p.m. poll closings. Polls just closed in Arkansas. We're getting some more votes there. And we can project in Maine's 2nd District before we get to Arkansas. Donald Trump has held this for the GOP. Not a surprise. Rural district that he did very well in both times. As you can see here, he's up by around 4% with a couple more votes to come in. So not a surprise out of this district. Donald Trump will hold on to it. Now going over to Arkansas, polls just closed there. Not a surprise here either. 6 electoral votes staying with President Trump. And we want to give you an update on Georgia, though, because Georgia, the votes are coming in pretty quickly. Percentages are even right now. Joe Biden at 41.6, Donald Trump at 53.8. But again, the percentages, if you look at your needle on screen, dead even. Both needles point to the middle, so Joe Biden has improved a little bit since his initial bad showing with those early votes coming in from northern Georgia. And 64% of the votes in. We have a lot of votes outstanding from the Atlanta metro area, and DeKalb County hasn't even counted a single vote yet, so that will boost Joe Biden, but will it be enough to overtake Trump? We're going to have to wait and see, as always. North Carolina, this one looking pretty good for Joe Biden at this hour, actually. Early on looked good for Trump, but 49.9% for the incumbent president. But 49.9% of the vote for the incumbent president, 48% for the former president. And as you can see, Joe Biden actually doing very well in all of those suburbs, specifically in Charlotte and Raleigh. Very strong showing for him in those counties. Not doing too well up north, but as you can see in those suburbs, those are tilting the state towards Joe Biden at this hour with about 3/4 of the vote in. Votes coming in very quickly, so that could be an early clue for how the night's going. In Florida, Donald Trump very likely to win at this point as he is closing in rapidly with more votes to come in from that Panhandle region, Tallahassee fully in. So if our predictions are correct, no more counties that are going to vote Democratic will come in. We do have an error on screen. As you can see, Joe Biden actually is leading in Alachua County. He on screen is trailing in it right now, but he should be ahead there. Either way, likely he'll lose the state. In Pennsylvania, this is another big one for Democrats. Joe Biden actually out to a very good start. Mostly early votes coming in from some of these counties, though. But Joe Biden does lead Donald Trump, and at this hour seems very likely to win Pennsylvania. But while 2/3 the vote have yet to come in, so way too early to call that state. So let's take a look at our electoral map. 55.5% of the vote for Joe Biden, 44.5% for Donald Trump. We gave you a lot of updates on those close states, but in case you missed it, Donald Trump did win Arkansas and Maine's 2nd district, so he closed the gap a little bit. But not looking too good for him in states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina, which could be a problem. It's now 9 o'clock on the East Coast. We have some projections to make. First, we can project in New Hampshire 4 electoral votes at stake here. Was expected to be a pretty solid state for Joe Biden, and that's what's happening. He's up by 9% right now and will likely hold on to New Hampshire. We can now go over to the state of New York. 28 electoral votes here, the biggest Democratic state on the East Coast. No surprise, will stay with the president. New Mexico, out west, now 5 electoral votes here for Joe Biden. He will hold on. Colorado, very left-running state, was kind of once a swing state, but now not really at all. And it will go to Joe Biden. In Ohio, 17 electoral votes. This is a big projection we're about to make for Donald Trump. Obviously, he was trailing for most of the night, but as these Republican areas begin to come in, he has taken that lead. And as you can see, doing pretty well in those working-class areas up north, Mahoning and Trumbull County, returning to his column, despite the fact that Biden had leads earlier on in the night. So, Ohio, solid for President Trump. As more votes come in, that lead will only grow. Let's now go over to our next state, which is at this hour going to be the state of Louisiana. 8 electoral votes over there in the south. Donald Trump will hold on. We can also project, once we are finished with Louisiana, we can also project that Nebraska, their at-large vote, 2 electoral votes there, will go to Donald Trump. Of course, we can also call that 1st district, which is the more kind of ex-urban seat, and we're also going to call that 3rd district, which is the reddest, or one of the reddest districts in the country, out in that rural western part of the state. 3% in, 1 electoral vote at stake. Donald Trump holding on there easily. In South Dakota, both the Dakotas actually were at this hour ready to call for the president. 3 electoral votes each. And of course, there's North Dakota. But in Wyoming, this is another solid Republican state out east. No surprise here. Donald Trump will win this state by a landslide. So let's now go over to Michigan. Polls closed there a couple minutes ago. We're getting our first results, mostly early votes, but it's a pretty good showing for Joe Biden right now. Every county's reported some amount of votes, and he's doing very well, actually leading in a lot of counties he lost in 2020. So at this hour, we can say Joe Biden is favored to win Michigan, but only 3% of the vote in, very early, to say the least. In Wisconsin, only 4% of the vote in, and it's really good for Joe Biden so far. Dane County just dropping a lot of their election day and early votes, so kind of a mix there. Joe Biden doing very well early on, but remember that it is too early to call a winner in Wisconsin. We only have 1 county in. Minnesota, Donald Trump actually leading here, although, again, not likely to win it. Mostly rural counties coming in, and he's doing fine there, but as Minneapolis comes in, we're expecting Joe Biden will take the lead back. In Kansas, weirdly enough, these results are kind of coming in scattered, but the biggest counties that have reported the most votes are out in that eastern part of the state near Kansas City. Joe Biden leading there, but still not likely to win Kansas as a whole. Nebraska's 2nd district, right now Joe Biden favored by a little bit, although he is trailing. And in Texas, this is a big one. If Donald Trump loses Texas, it'll be all over for him. Right now, he's trailing. Actually, he's favored to lose it. This is a pretty big storyline, actually. As you can see right here, on Needles actually giving Biden a 52% chance of winning Texas. That's pretty shocking, actually. He's up by 20, but we're getting that. I'm told by my team we're getting that because he's doing very well in the suburbs, specifically north of Austin. He's actually overperforming his 2020 numbers by 6 to 7 points in some of those counties north of Austin, specifically in Williamson, which is the light blue county at the top of the counties reported in the Austin area. So not very good for Donald Trump, but we're waiting on more counties to come in. But if the rest of the state looks like this, Joe Biden will win Texas narrowly. So that's something to watch as this night progresses. For the electoral votes at stake there, obviously Trump has to have that if he wants to win. Arizona, 11 electoral votes at stake there. Right now, very close, although so far Donald Trump doing pretty well in Maricopa County, leading by about 0.1%. With 89% of the vote in at this hour, we can say that Joe Biden has a lead of a couple 100,000, a little over 160,000 votes, and he's up by 2.5% statewide. 16 electoral votes at stake there. Every county's reported votes, so we're kind of waiting on these last ballots to come in. But as you can see, Joe Biden's actually doing pretty well in the suburbs, specifically Caribas County north of Charlotte. That's the kind of triangle-shaped county in that Charlotte region. Joe Biden doing very well there. We can also say he's doing very well in the Fayetteville and the Raleigh areas. So that's pretty good for him right now. Again, we're expecting the state to tighten up a little bit, but Joe Biden, if he can win North Carolina, that would be a huge blow to the Trump campaign. It would really foreclose all of their paths to their presidency. They need North Carolina, and if Joe Biden wins it, that is a crushing blow, to say the least, to Donald Trump. Now, going over to Pennsylvania, kind of tilting back towards Trump, actually. We had some votes coming in that were more early votes, and now it looks like Donald Trump's actually favored to win Pennsylvania. That's a pretty big development because he's, doing pretty poorly in Texas and North Carolina, but Pennsylvania right now, not looking too good for Joe Biden. Donald Trump leading in Bucks County, leading in Northampton County, and leading in Erie County. That's a bit of a problem. These are all counties that voted for Joe Biden in 2020. If Trump holds on to them, he'll likely win Pennsylvania. So that's interesting, kind of getting some conflicting news. For Donald Trump, you're doing well in Pennsylvania, but not so well in North Carolina and Texas. That's really interesting. But again, politics is hard to predict, so what can we say? 58% chance Joe Biden still wins the presidency, though obviously he can afford to lose Pennsylvania if he wins one of North Carolina or Texas, or even better for him if he wins both. Donald Trump really needs to win Texas and hope he can hold on to Pennsylvania. So still pretty close, though Joe Biden does have the advantage, both in percentages and raw electoral vote count at this hour. So let's now go over to our 10 o'clock poll closings in 4 states. But before we look at those, we want to show you a big result we just got. In Florida, Donald Trump has been projected the winner here, 92% of the vote in. We want to show you the kind of vote tallies here. Close to being final. Donald Trump did actually flip Miami-Dade County. He's up there by about 6% right now. That's a pretty good margin. It could narrow up as some provisional ballots come in, but no matter what, Donald Trump, very good performance in Florida right now. We're also going to go over to Kansas. We had this too early to call an hour ago. We're going to call it now with just over half the vote being reported. Still some counties to come in, but they will likely favor Donald Trump anyways, and he's leading by a little bit statewide. Let's now go over after Kansas. As you can see, we have another projection to make, and it's going to be in Utah. 6 electoral votes there, 3% of the vote in. Donald Trump leading right now. We're going to call that for him. And in Minnesota, on the other hand, 39% of the vote in, 10 electoral votes at stake there. Joe Biden will win this state. Obviously, you want to show you the county map right now. He's doing very well, up by 16%. Some more Republican counties will kind of come in, and we should get more GOP favorable vote totals in these counties. But right now, Joe Biden up by enough to kind of call the state for Democrats. Another one in Michigan, 15 electoral votes. This one's a little more important than Minnesota. 56% of the votes been reporting, and we're ready to call it for Joe Biden. As you can see here, he's up by a little over 5%. That's pretty good for him right now. Obviously, some more votes could come in that will favor the GOP, but we're projecting that he will win based off his very good showings in Kent County and Oakland County. He's also doing very well in Detroit, Kalamazoo, and Lansing, so we're ready to call that one for Joe Biden. In Nebraska's 2nd district, 71% of the votes in, 1 electoral vote at stake here. Not too surprising. He won this by 7% in 2020. Right now, he's up by a little bit less than that, but will likely win by a similar amount once these votes from Omaha come in. So, as you can see there, he's doing very well in Nebraska's 2nd district. But let's now go over to our next state, and we're going to show you North Carolina. Story of the night, and it just tilted towards Trump now. It's so close right now at this hour. 95% of the vote, and just a little over 12,000 votes separating these two candidates. It really has narrowed up since our first look at it an hour ago. But as you can see right now, Joe Biden holding on to his gains in the suburbs, but kind of really underperforming in those rural areas up north, and that's a problem for him. He needed to do well there, and right now the reason that he's only up by 0.02% instead of that 2% he was up by about an hour ago, those rural voters not really coming out for Joe Biden. So 95% of the vote, and it's way too close to call right now, but Donald Trump now needle tilting in his direction. That's a pretty good sign for him. And here's another sign for him that could be favorable. He's favored to win Iowa. Joe Biden has a lead right now, but of course, mostly rural counties left outstanding. We're going to count those once they come in. Nevada, this one's very close. We actually don't have enough information, so that needle's still 50-50 just because we don't have enough information. We don't actually know whether this is early vote or election day vote. But either way, Joe Biden trailing early on. This is land or county, so not too much to say there. But obviously, only 1% in. We're kind of going to have to wait for more votes to come from Nevada. But let's look at Montana. Kind of a surprise. We're not calling it yet. Obviously, Jon Tester actually looks like he's going to win that Senate race at this hour, but the presidential race still a bit more in doubt. We do expect Donald Trump to win it, but we're not going to call it just yet. In Arizona, we do want to give you an update. Joe Biden has taken the lead there, and he's actually favored to win it by about a 2-to-1 ratio. That's pretty good for him. Obviously, not to say he needed to have, but would have liked to have to cover up for any potential surprise flips. He won it back in 2020, and he's leading in Maricopa County. That's the most important county in the state, and looks like he's on track to hold on to Arizona, although it is too early to call there. We're going to go over to Georgia now, which is actually tilting towards Joe Biden at this hour with 88% of the vote in. We got most of our votes from DeKalb County. We're waiting on a few more from the Atlanta Metro. Joe Biden, as you can see, kind of a coalition shift. He's actually doing very well in that Atlanta Metro area. He's actually holding on to Fayette County at this hour, which he lost by 3 points in 2020, but underperforming across that rural black portion of the state, kind of in the center, losing a few counties he won back in 2020. But again, all he needs is a win from Georgia, and right now he's favored to do so as more Democratic areas from Fulton and DeKalb County come in. Now, Pennsylvania, this is another big one for Joe Biden. He's up here. If he can hold on to those leads in Pennsylvania and Georgia, he'll be in pretty good shape. Obviously, leads in counties have flipped back towards Joe Biden. That's pretty good for him. We're going to go to Wisconsin now, where he's favored only by a little bit, though. As you can see here, he's up by about 5.4%. Pretty strong showing for him so far in Wisconsin, but only 54% of the vote in, so we're going to have to wait for more reports here. The vote's really just kind of going slow right now, so Wisconsin could unfortunately take a while for us to call. So electoral map update, Joe Biden with these good developments for him in Pennsylvania and Georgia. It's actually favored by a pretty good amount right now, largest lead of the night, but obviously the electoral vote count is still very close at this hour. So we'll keep you posted on that total. Let's now go 11 o'clock poll closings. We have some projections to make, though. In the state of Pennsylvania, big call. We said Joe Biden was favored by a pretty good amount there, but an hour ago, he's now up with 90% of the vote, and we're ready to call it here. As you can see here, he's past 50% of the vote. We could actually see him do a little better in Philadelphia as we get more votes there, but he's up by 3% right now. No reason to think that lead will erode even a little bit. So Joe Biden doing very well in Pennsylvania, and as you can see, this will likely be your final kind of county map of the state. Let's now go over to California, where there's 54 electoral votes at stake for Joe Biden. That's a Democratic hold. Obviously, he won it back in 2020. And if you go over to Oregon, you'll also see 8 electoral votes at stake there. Joe Biden will win this state. In the state of Washington, 12 electoral votes at stake there. We can project Joe Biden will hold on. We can also project that in Hawaii, 4 electoral votes over in the Pacific. Joe Biden winning these no problem. Now we have some calls for Donald Trump. In Montana, it was too early to call there, but half an hour ago we're ready to call it for Donald Trump. Now we just want to show the county map real quick. He's up there by about 10%. Obviously, Jon Tester still likely to win that Senate race as this result stands at the moment, but Joe Biden has lost Montana. You can also project Iowa. This is another one that we are expecting to vote for Trump, just we're not really prepared to call it that early on. It will go for Donald Trump. As you can see here, we're officially calling it for him. And then finally, in the state of Idaho, another 4 electoral votes there, kind of in that rural Mountain West part of the country. Not a surprise here, we'll go for Donald Trump. Now, Georgia, this is a big one for Joe Biden. If he can win it, he will be very close to winning that presidential re-election. He's up right now by a pretty good amount. Another interesting kind of result here is that he is up, even though we haven't actually gotten the full count from Atlanta yet, so that will likely tilt the state even more in his favor. Let's go to Wisconsin, where it's very close right now. Donald Trump actually up by about 0.2%, but Joe Biden's still favored to win based on how well he's doing in the counties that have fully reported. And in Arizona, Joe Biden likely to win that state as well, up by 3.1% at this hour. We're waiting to call it just because we want to get more votes from these kind of ex-urban counties to see if Trump can overperform by enough to close that gap. We're also waiting for a few more votes from Maricopa, but right now Joe Biden seems like he's on track to win Arizona. In Nevada, Donald Trump actually doing pretty well here right now. He's up by about 0.9%. It's a pretty good result for him at this moment. He's doing very well in Clark County specifically, but too close to call in Nevada. So this is our electoral map right now. Joe Biden, 92% chance of winning the presidency. He only has to win one of these yellow states to be officially declared the winner. And as you can see here, it looks like this electoral map does favor him. So Joe Biden on the cusp of the presidency at this hour. The polls just closed in Alaska, and we're going to call that for Donald Trump right now. We're doing actually pretty well there. But more importantly, we do want to show you something. Right now, we can project Texas, 4 electoral votes at stake there for the president. He will hold on to Texas, 3 for 3 there. It's going to be pretty close, 73% of the vote in, but as you can see, Donald Trump doing very well in the South in that Rio Grande Valley region. He also did very well in Houston, in those exurbs of Houston. Losing some ground in Dallas and Austin, but not enough to lose in the state. So that's a pretty good report for Donald Trump, although he'll need a lot more to kind of come back and win this presidency. And this is going to be the dagger for him. Wisconsin, we just got reports. We're ready to call it for Joe Biden here. We'll show you why. As you can see right now, he's up by about 2%, 96% of the vote, and we just got a big dump of votes from Milwaukee. The only votes left outstanding are mostly provisional ballots from Milwaukee, Madison, and Eau Claire, and that should be enough to actually boost Biden's lead maybe past 50%. And so at this point, it's not a question of whether he wins Wisconsin, just by how much. So what that means is that we're ready to call the presidency for him. We're also actually going to call Georgia for him as well, with 94% of the vote in there. Not too surprising. Obviously, the results we're getting for the final few hours of the night were really good for Joe Biden, but we're officially ready to call it for him now, just because he's doing so well in the Atlanta metro area. That's a result we're ready to project for Joe Biden, so that adds on to his total. And so as you can see right now, he's officially won the presidency with 286 electoral votes right now. We could see more. Waiting on calls from Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, but doesn't matter. Joe Biden has been reelected president. So obviously want to show you that graphic, put it on screen. Joe Biden will defeat Donald Trump. He's won re-election to a second term, but we still have more calls to make in the state. Just before, we just want to show you the electoral map one more time, but in the state of Arizona, 11 electoral votes there, 93% of the vote in. That's a hold for Joe Biden at this hour. Was expected to be very close. It's going to end up being pretty close, but as you can see here, Joe Biden with the clear advantage, with 93% of votes having been reported there. Another hold for the Democrats, and we're also going to call Nevada for Joe Biden. 91% of the vote in, a bit smaller of a state. It was a state he was actually expected to lose by most pollsters, but nevertheless, he's up right now, and he will win it. We have him taking the lead by 0.1%, and we have more ballots from Clark County that are left to be counted that will likely favor him by a good amount. So 91% of the vote in, Joe Biden has won Nevada. You want to show North Carolina, though. This is the final state. Right now, Donald Trump does look likely to win it. We do want to wait on those ballots that are likely to come in from Raleigh and Wake County up in the center of the state. That is a really big question at this hour, because we just got reports that there are actually 25,000 more ballots left to be counted in Wake County that are likely to favor Joe Biden by a good amount. If that is true, he will likely win the state. If not, which we're assuming is still the case, Donald Trump will likely win the state. But we still have that other 1% of precincts that just are yet to report. So still have a lot of questions left in North Carolina, but not a ton left to put the presidency. Joe Biden will be elected the next president. So this is our electoral map right now. Obviously, he's held on to all his 2020 states. The only question is whether or not he will win North Carolina, which was obviously so competitive in 2020. It's even more close this time, and we're just going to kind of have to wait and see whether or not those ballots are going to come in for Joe Biden in Wake County. So we just want to show you that kind of electoral map again before we give our key race alert. And we're actually ready to call North Carolina. At this hour, we can project Joe Biden has won it here. Not a result we were expecting to make a few hours ago, but what ended up happening was those ballots from Wake County did come in. They did end up going for Joe Biden, and that won in the state, essentially. He's up by about 0.07%, and we'll do a recount, obviously, but it's likely he will win North Carolina. So our final electoral map here, Joe Biden 319, Donald Trump 219, and a very close election overall in the popular vote, but Joe Biden did very well in most of these swing states, and he's been reelected president. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe if you're not already. Like the video if you have not done so already. I had a lot of fun making this. It was kind of a new theme for me. It was definitely a challenge, but I always enjoy it. So Again, thank you so much for 6,000 subscribers. That's why I made this video. You guys decided the results here in that Google form from last week. Obviously, it was very close. North Carolina was only decided 55-45 in favor of Joe Biden. So that was fun to watch. I appreciate everyone who filled it out. I appreciate everyone who subscribed. So again, thank you so much, and I will see you all in the next video.